Hello everyone, my name is Maggie and I'm from Weller Health Education at Lehigh Valley Riley Children's Hospital. What Weller does is we're in charge of creating really great educational programs on different health topics here on our YouTube channel. Now, today we're going to be covering a really great topic that I think most of you are familiar with, and that is COVID-19, specifically the COVID vaccine. Now, on the internet, there is a ton of misinformation going around. Things that are being said are not true, and things that are said that are true. But how can we tell the difference between the two? How can we figure out what is fact and what is fiction? That is what I'm going to try to achieve today. I'm going to try and go through some really common myths that I see circulating on social media and break them down with science and with facts. So let's get started. All right, everyone, let's try to break down the COVID-19 vaccine. Let's try to understand it a little bit better, understand how it works, and just definitely try to separate that fact from that fiction, going through the facts and going through the myths. So one big myth that I see circulating all over the internet, especially on things like Facebook, the first thing that people say is, oh, we don't know what's in it. We're injecting poison into our systems and we have no idea the ingredients inside of it. The pharmaceutical companies are hiding it from us. We don't know what's going on. Well, this is actually a really big myth because we do know what's in it. Every single ingredient on every single vaccine is actually listed. So fact, every ingredient for each vaccine is online, not only on manufacturer websites, but actually on the CDC and the National Institute of Health websites as well. So it is found in reliable sources, and that is something I'm going to emphasize multiple times, reliable sources. So places like the CDC and places like the NIH are considered reliable. They get their information from scientists who have studied these things multiple times. They get it from journals, from universities, and places that perform research that is peer-reviewed. So anytime research is done, it is reviewed by other scientists in the community. They check for bias, they check and make sure the studies are done correctly, that there's plenty of participants before anything is published, which is a really great part of the scientific community. Having all of these people to check things over, and when you get those things that are peer-reviewed, that makes it more reliable. And with the CDC and NIH, everything that they do is reliable because they do this peer review process. So what exactly are the ingredients? What are the big ones that we see in the vaccine? So one really big ingredient that is found is going to be the main ingredient. This is called mRNA. The M stands for messenger. So this word kind of looks a little familiar. Maybe to you guys it seems more like DNA. DNA is something that we're all kind of familiar with. What makes RNA different from DNA? Well, think of it like this. If you found a recipe for bread in your house from your grandmother, but it turns out the recipe is all in Italian. I have an Italian grandmother, so believe me, this is something I run into sometimes. So you look at this Italian recipe and you're like, oh man, I want to make it, but I don't speak Italian. Think of the Italian recipe as DNA. What DNA does is it translates that information into RNA. RNA would now be the recipe in English. So now our body is able to read that recipe, read the mRNA, and make it into things that our body uses, like proteins. So you get the recipe in Italian, DNA, translate it over to mRNA, English, and then finally after that we're able to make our final product. So that's what mRNA actually is. And mRNA for the vaccine, it contains the instructions for our body to make a tiny little protein that our body is able to read and trigger an immune response. Now, another big ingredient you're going to see in all of the COVID vaccines is something called lipids. Now, I know here on your screen you're seeing a lot of scientific names and you're not sure exactly what these mean. Trust me, they're very complicated to read and they're complicated to even pronounce. Now, these are all called lipids. Well, what exactly are lipids? Lipids are just another name for fats. And in the COVID vaccine, we use these lipids to protect that mRNA. Kind of acts as a delivery vehicle for our cells. Think of it like this. If you have a ring that is stuck on your finger and you cannot get it off, what do? You usually put some kind of oil or lotion, and this way that ring slips right off. When we coat the mRNA in these kind of lipids, these fats, it makes it nice and slippery just like on a ring, and it allows that mRNA to get inside our cells a lot easier. And finally, one of the last ingredients we use in the COVID vaccine is something called salts. Salts are added to the COVID vaccine to just make it a little bit more stable. This way, that vaccine is going to balance the acidity that's in our bodies, and it keeps those components of the vaccine from separating or breaking down. We want to make sure that mRNA is as stable as possible so our body can read it and trigger that immune response. So these salts just make it a little bit more stable and a little bit easier for our body to read then. In addition, in some of the other vaccines, such as Pfizer and in the Moderna one, they also add small amounts of sugars as well. So these are all things that our body knows and our bodies are familiar with. So myth number 2 I see a lot is that the vaccine causes infertility. If you get the vaccine, say goodbye to having any children. Well, this, guys, is a really, really big myth. How do we know? How do we know it is a myth? Well, fact, there has been no evidence to suggest the COVID vaccine causes infertility. Trust me, scientists check into all the side effects, and they do plenty of studies to verify. Scientists have done multiple studies comparing pregnancy success rates in women with antibodies from the COVID vaccine, so people who have had the COVID vaccine and now have the antibodies from it. People who have antibodies from a recent COVID infection, so that means they had COVID, they have those antibodies, but they have not had the vaccine. And finally, people with no antibodies from the vaccine or from a recent COVID infection. They checked those rates in all 3 of these groups, and the scientists found absolutely no difference in the 3 groups. They all had around the same success rate, meaning that there is no statistical difference. So don't worry, you will be able to have children if you have this vaccine, all right? That causes no problems with infertility with men and with women either. Myth number 3 that I see all the time is that the vaccine is going to change your DNA. It's going into our cells and it's changing our DNA, changing who we are from the inside out. This is a really, really big myth. Why? Why is it a myth? Well, fact. COVID-19 vaccines do not change or interact with our DNA in any way. So earlier, I explained the difference between mRNA and DNA. Well, DNA is actually found in a different part of our cells. So here you can see a small picture of a cell. This blue thing right here, that is the nucleus of a cell. That's right, everybody, I'm taking you back to 9th grade biology. The nucleus is where our DNA is going to be found. Now, when the vaccine is injected into our system, that messenger RNA goes inside of our cells, but it does not go inside the nucleus where DNA is found. Our body reads this RNA and it creates this protein that is going to then trigger an immune response. So, the mRNA never enters the nucleus of the cell, which is where our DNA is located, meaning that there is no possible way for the mRNA to alter our DNA. Myth number 4. The vaccine development was rushed, they cut corners, it was sloppy research, therefore we cannot trust the safety. This vaccine is going to kill us all. Well, this is another myth. So fact, when COVID began, every major scientist stopped what they were working on to focus on researching this brand new disease and a potential vaccine. Now, at any given moment in the world, there is some scientists in the basement of a university researching some disease out there at any point. Now, every scientist, when they all work together to focus on one illness and one vaccine, it is amazing what we're able to accomplish. So they were able to all focus and put all of their manpower into finding a cure for this deadly illness because hundreds and thousands of people are dying every single day still. The technology was also already there. So scientists were already researching RNA vaccines for other illnesses, and COVID-19 happened to be a perfect fit, and it worked amazingly. So this type of research should absolutely be celebrated. This is an amazing achievement for human beings. Also, the COVID vaccines went through the same rigorous testing as any other vaccine. So there were trials, they did studies, they were blinded studies, which means the scientists kept bias out of it. Trust me, I was literally a participant in the Pfizer vaccine trial, so there was a potential that I had the vaccine way before anybody else did. And I asked them plenty of questions, and I read the research, and trust me, it worked the same way as any other vaccine or any other drug research out there. The only thing that the scientists were able to skip was some extra paperwork, all the extra bureaucracy that goes into these types of things. The science itself was dedicated and completed just like any other would be. And it was researched multiple times, so that it was peer-reviewed. Remember I talked about that earlier? Other scientists looked into it, it was checked over, the numbers were crunched to make sure everything was factually correct. And it was, and it's proven to be a modern miracle. Next myth, myth number 5. The vaccine side effects are more dangerous than the disease. The vaccine is killing more people than people who are dying of COVID. Well, this is another myth. The reason why is because as of September, when this video was filmed, there have been 4.55 million deaths as a result of COVID-19 worldwide. Those were 4.55 preventable deaths if we had had the vaccine from the beginning. Now, when people get the COVID vaccine, there are some side effects. A lot of people say they get more side effects with the second vaccine than the first. For me, when I had my vaccine, for the first dose, I felt totally fine. My arm was a little sore, but for the second dose, I had a very, very low fever and I was a little tired. So the vast majority of side effects of the vaccine are mild, such as low fever, sore arm, body aches, fatigue, and you may be a little bit more tired. The same side effects you would get with vaccines like the flu shot. Now, although there are serious side effects, such as the possibility of an allergic reaction, but with allergic reactions, you run the same risk with anything you encounter in life. You risk an allergic reaction the first time you have a peanut butter sandwich, or you have some fruit that may trigger a reaction. So allergic reactions do happen, but again, they are incredibly rare, especially with the vaccine. And scientists are saying if you're somebody who has anaphylaxis that comes with allergic reactions, to consult your doctor first. And when you do get the vaccine, you actually sit in the waiting room for a few minutes, just in case you do have an immediate allergic reaction. There are nurses and other medical professionals on call there to help you, just in case something was to happen. And finally, there are also temporary heart effects. However, they are, I cannot emphasize this enough, incredibly rare. A recent study that was published found that there was an average of 2 cases of myocarditis per 100,000 doses given. This comes out to about a 0.02% increased risk. And people who did have this case of myocarditis, it is usually very mild and temporary. Now, there are some people with long-lasting effects, but again, it is even less than this percentage you see here on your screen. And to remind you, your risk of dying from COVID far outweighs all of this. So it is very safe to take the vaccine. The side effects are mild, and any serious side effects are so incredibly rare. And finally, myth number 6. This is one I see the absolute most in comment sections, posted on social media, and even in conversation. Our natural immunity is better. Why bother getting a fake vaccine full of poisonous ingredients when we can let our own body's natural immunity do it? Well, this is another huge myth. So, fact. The COVID-19 vaccine works by using mRNA, like I talked about earlier, to kind of trick your immune cells into thinking you actually have COVID, when in reality, you don't. Then our immune cells create something called antibodies, which are unique specifically to COVID-19, giving your body protection against the disease. Your body is still creating its own immune cells. It's not like the vaccine is injecting you with somebody else's immune cells or microchips or anything like that. It's just injecting the instructions to create a protein that simulates having COVID without actually having the trouble of contracting it. And when you have actual COVID, you're risking long-term effects or even death. So when you get the vaccine, your body thinks it's sick, but you're not actually. That's why you don't get those side effects from the vaccine like you would with the illness. That's why people who are sick with COVID end up in the hospital, because they are sick. With the vaccine, your body just thinks you are without giving those side effects, but still creating those antibodies the same way they would if you actually had the disease. All right, everybody, so we made it to the end. So I hope you all learned a lot today. Hopefully I explained this all in a way that made sense, and hopefully I was able to explain and separate those myths from those facts. I encourage you all to share this video with people that you know, especially people who are currently hesitant in getting the vaccine. The only way to encourage people to get vaccinated is to spread reliable information. So if you guys would ever like to learn more and like to get some great information on other health topics, hit the subscribe button down low and follow our channel, Weller Health Education at Lehigh Valley Riley Children's Hospital. Thanks you all for watching. See you in the next video. Bye!